Salutare, dragilor! Cum credeți? Am înnebunit toți în povestea asta? Să citim în engleză, să vedem. Bine, dacă mai înțelegem ceva, nu? Chapter 7. A Mad Tea Party. There was a table set under a tree in front of the house, and the hare and the hatter, the person with the hat, were having tea at it. A mouse was sitting between them fast asleep, and the other two were using it as a cushion, resting their elbows on it. The table was a large one, but they were all crowded together at one corner of it. "No room, no room," they cried out when they saw Alice coming. "There is plenty of room," said Alice, and she sat down in a large armchair at one end of the table. "Have some wine," said the hare in an encouraging tone. Alice looked around, but she saw nothing else but tea. "I don't see any wine," she remarked. "There isn't any," said the hare. "Well, if there isn't any, it isn't very civil of you to offer it," said Alice angrily. "It wasn't very civil of you to sit down without being invited," said the hare. "Come, we shall have some fun now," thought Alice. "I'm glad they've begun asking riddles, because I believe I can guess them." "Do you mean that you think you can find out the answer to them?" said the hare. "Exactly so." "Well, then you should say what you mean," the hare went on. "I do," Alice said. At least I mean what I say. That's the same thing, you know." "It's not the same thing a bit," said the hatter. "Why? You might as well just say, 'I see what I eat is the same thing as I eat what I see.'" "You might just as well say," added the hare, "that I like what I get is the same thing as I get what I like." The conversation dropped, and the party sat silent for a minute. The hatter was the one to break the silence. "What day of the month is it?" he said, turning to Alice. He had taken his watch out of his pocket and was looking at it uneasily, shaking it every now and then and holding it to his ear. Alice had been looking over his shoulder with some curiosity. "What a funny watch," she remarked. "It tells the day of the month, but it doesn't tell what o'clock it is." "Why should it?" muttered the hatter. "Does your watch tell you what year it is?" "Of course not," Alice replied very readily. "But that's because it stays the same year for such a long time together." "Which is just the same with mine," said the hatter. Alice felt dreadfully puzzled. The hatter's remark seemed to her to have no sort of meaning, and yet it was certainly English. "I don't quite understand," she said, as politely as she could. "I think you might do something better with the time," she said, "than waste it in asking riddles that have no answer." "If you knew time as well as I do," said the hatter, "you wouldn't talk about wasting it. It's him." "I don't know what you mean." "Of course you don't," the hatter said, tossing his head contemptuously. "I dare say you never even spoke to time." "Perhaps not, but I know I have to beat it when I learn music." "Ah, that accounts for it," said the hatter. "He won't stand beating. Now, if you only kept on good terms with him, he'd do almost anything you like with the clock. For instance, suppose it were 9 o'clock in the morning, just time to begin lessons. You'd only have to whisper a hint to time, and round goes the clock in a twinkling. 1:30, time for dinner." "That would be grand, certainly," said Alice. "But then I shouldn't be hungry for it, you know." Not at first, perhaps, said the Hatter, but you could keep it to 1:30 as long as you liked. So this is why, said Alice, it's tea time here all the time. It's always 6 o'clock. Here, take some more tea, said the Hare to Alice very earnestly. I've had nothing yet, said Alice in an offended tone, so I can't take more. You mean you can't take less, said the Hatter. It's very easy to take more than nothing. Alice was beginning to be very, very puzzled. So she walked off. Neither of the other two took the least notice of her going. Last time she saw them, they were trying to put the mouse into the teapot. At any rate, I'll never go there again. It's the stupidest tea party I ever was at in all my life. Just as she said this, she noticed that one of the trees had a door leading right up into it. That's very curious. But everything's curious today. I think I might as well go in at once, said Alice. Once more she found herself in the long hall and close to the little glass table. Now I'll manage better this time, unlocking the door that led into the garden. And then, suddenly, she found herself at last in this beautiful garden among the bright flower beds and the cool fountain.